While I am here, I shall be responsible for visiting about 40 of the men's living huts of this depot. The permanent chaplain of the depot has given us each some to look after. At 10:45 we had the first of a series of lectures on the duties of a chaplain in the field, in one of the church huts close to us. The lecturer is a man named Kirk, who has been a chaplain 3 years in France, and is now attached to this RA command depot and belongs to our mess. I live in the transport lines of my battalion. That's quite a safe place, within shell fire from heavy guns, but as a matter of fact, hardly any shells come this way, though we hear firing, always.
From all sources I have heard the same story, that the chaplains were doing everything that was possible in comforting the dying and in helping the wounded, exposing themselves continually to the hottest shell fire to find and collect the wounded. And what I think is perhaps grander, they were doing it not for themselves, merit or honour, but because it was their duty.
Yesterday morning, a clergyman came up our lines, wished us all good morning. I guessed rightly him to be Reverend Wincup. Later it was announced that a communion service would be held at 11:30 in the dressing station on the canal bank, so I went. Reverend W addressed a few words to us before the service, saying how pleased he was to be with us, etc., and asking us to be sure to let him know if there was anything he could do for any of us. He also asked whether we preferred to have the service standing or kneeling, as the floor was a bit sloppy in places, and finally he left it optional. I may say no one stood. We have knelt in worse places than a stone floor with disinfectant on, but he is new to this life. It was a quiet, impressive service. Some of the commandments could hardly be taken literally, especially about Sundays and covetousness and other things, but we all responded heartily. After the service was over, I stayed behind to try and get a word with Rev W, and was pleased I did, as he was very nice. When I told him my name, at once he knew who I was. He said there was a facial resemblance to you, and said both he and Mrs. W thought very highly of your useful work in their parish, and so on. I'm afraid he will have many disappointments during his army career, as a very small percentage can bring themselves to a state of mind necessary for communion, except Roman Catholics, of course, who never miss a chance of Mass. It is certainly not my turn yet, so your prayers are answered so far. We are quite callous now about death. One has to be. I've not seen the Reverend Mr. Wincup for a month, but I hear he was in the trenches the other day. He always stops and has a word when we meet.
My dear Mr. Conder, it is with a feeling of deepest sympathy that I write to you informing you of the death of your son, Lance Corporal Conder. He was killed early this morning, and I took the funeral tonight at 7:30. I am extremely sorry for you and your family. In fact, words seem to fail me to adequately express my sympathy. Your son was exceedingly popular among his comrades and very highly respected, and his death is very deeply regretted in the battalion. Your grief will be very great, and I can only hope and pray that the blow may be lightened as much as possible by the memory of the gallant manner in which your son had so bravely done his duty on behalf of his country. Pray God comfort you and bless you in all your great affliction. We buried your son's body today in a newly made little cemetery a short distance behind the firing line, where there rest the bodies of many other fine British soldiers. It was dangerous work taking the funeral, for the German bullets were flying all about the place. But still I am glad to have been able to perform this last sad ceremony. Your son was killed instantly. He did not suffer at all. Yours very truly, R. Wincup.
If ever human nature showed that, at bottom, the consciousness of God is in it, it is at times like this, when men cannot tell what the day will bring.
To my astonishment, I found I was the first chaplain ashore, none of the army chaplains having yet arrived. From man to man I went, ministering to their needs as best I could. The great cry in that hour of anguish was, "Water, water, for God's sake, a drink!" With many a man I repeated a last prayer to God, and over many said the last prayers of the church. But the full story of those first hours on the beach can never be written. Much of it is too sacred to repeat, and it will descend with me to the grave.